So we have the announcement of the PlayStation 5 Pro. It is coming out later in 2024. It is going to be $700. And at least in what we know so far, it doesn't seem to be that crazy impressive with its improvements. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about how this may change things for Xbox in the future. And I kind of just want to riff on all of that. So getting into it, I think this is interesting. I think that the release of the PS5 Pro likely means that we aren't going to see a PS6 for 3 or 4 years, more than likely, 2027, 28, more than likely. It really seems like, at least in some capacity, they're saying like, hey, we're going to be in this gen for a while. COVID really messed things up. Here's, if you want a better option, if you're unsatisfied with how games are that are releasing today, you will definitely be unsatisfied in the future because it's not going to get better. So here's another option. And what I think is interesting about that is that it's going to work. They're going to sell a decent number of those. A lot of people are perfectly happy with their base consoles still. Not everyone is as discerning as many of us are in this space. And that's how it's going to go. What this really wraps around to for me that I think is interesting is how there were rumors at one point that Xbox may be targeting as soon as 2026 for their next hardware release. And that is mostly backed up by the idea that they don't appear to be doing a Pro console or a mid-gen refresh of the series consoles. And instead, they are more than likely working on next gen. Now, we have some thought and we've heard some rumbles about a handheld they may be working on. Even Sarah Bond, who's the head of their hardware division, has said very plainly during the emergency stream they did a few months back about the multi-platform games, said their next hardware would be the biggest jump in power that hardware has ever seen with the consoles. Pretty bold statement, seems completely unrealistic, but we'll have to wait and see. But that was also around the time that rumors were that hardware may come as soon as 2026. Please keep in mind, it's 2024. It's getting towards the later half of 2024, which would mean that a year from now, Xbox could announce new hardware for a whole new generation, not just a mid-gen refresh, but their next generation of consoles entirely. And it's especially interesting because the current consoles are on what's called Zen 2, or I believe they're 2000 series AMD CPUs. It's worth noting that I believe in the time since that came out, they're now in the 7000 series of CPUs for AMD. And so it doesn't seem that crazy. And they're on Zen 3. It's a whole new generation of hardware. And apparently and supposedly their GPU hardware is going to be taking a big leap in the next gen as well. And so the hardware is going to be available in the next year, where they could, as soon as 2026, have an Xbox come out with Zen 3 tech, with the newer GPU tech they're putting out. Though we could even see Xbox get really crazy and team up with Intel or team up with NVIDIA. And all of that stuff could happen. That's a speculation for a different day. But it seems more and more likely to me that we may see Xbox try to jump the generation. And more than ever, we're going to see the three big main platforms all separate even more than they already have. We already have Nintendo focusing on the handheld market, doing their own thing, not trying to compete with graphics, not trying to compete with big AAA titles in the same way that we see PlayStation and Xbox trying to do. They're off doing their own thing. They basically skipped a generation of hardware, or they're kind of releasing the Xbox One and PS4 gen of hardware, like PS4 Pro, Xbox One X level, in 2025, more than likely. They're not even trying to come up to the current gen with their next hardware release. At least that's what's been rumored. And they don't care because their fans are going to buy it anyways. So you have Nintendo going one direction. You have PlayStation Now releasing a mid-gen refresh for a lot of money, to their current hardware, and very likely trying to ride that out until 2027 or 2028. And likely finally getting some more first party games out and some new God of Wars and Last of Us, or, Naughty Dog stuff, whatever everyone's doing on their side, which we haven't seen in a while. They're going to ride that out for quite a while longer, probably. And then we have Xbox, who has, quietly or not so quietly become likely the biggest publisher in the world for gaming, who also happens to have a hardware division and has their own platform, who, has reiterated that they are going to make more Xboxes, even if they have been more open to the idea of multi-platform games and opening up some of their first party titles to everyone, when they've already been doing that with PC for years and years and years at this point. You have them going their own direction, and they could be releasing new hardware as soon as 2026. I think it's a good thing in the long run. I think as much as everyone obviously enjoys the console wars and enjoys arguing about which thing is better and whose is better, if they really separate this much in the next, 4 to 5 years, it's going to be hard to even compare them. And it's honestly kind of hard to compare them now. What everyone does now is just focuses on hardware sales. So, the Switch has sold the most, the PlayStation 5 has sold the second most, and the Xbox is coming up third in that capacity. And that's how it's always talked about. But I remember a couple of years ago when we had the ABK leaks during the ABK trial, when they were trying to approve that deal or not in the United States. I remember the documents got accidentally leaked by Microsoft themselves that implied that revenue wise and profit margin wise, the three companies aren't really that far apart. And if I remember correctly, in some measures, Xbox was actually making more money or more profitable, I can't remember which one, than Nintendo even, which is insane. And it really, I think people focus a lot on like the headline conversations with this, where, like Sony has doubled up current gen sales of consoles over Xbox, but that doesn't mean they're making twice as much money, especially when hardware is an extremely low profit margin part of the business, where you have Xbox focusing on services, on Game Pass, on, acquiring new IP and studios, obviously. And so all of the things that have already happened, I think, are only going to get more interesting in the next 4 to 5 years, as we have Nintendo release their next gen of console in 2025. That will probably be basically a gen behind PlayStation and Xbox, but those fans don't care. As long as it runs well, especially if it has like DLSS, it'll be fine. And they'll put lots of great games on there and they'll sell 100 million of them. And then you could have Xbox release a new console in a couple years, and it'll be super powerful and have all this cool stuff. They'll brag about being the most powerful console for a while. And then probably 2 years after that, PlayStation will release the PlayStation 6 with Last of Us 15, and everyone's going to lose their mind about that. And then we'll probably turn into this interesting thing where every couple years we'll get this exciting new release. There won't be that like PlayStation and Xbox release within a few months of each other conversation, because they'll be separated. And honestly, it's probably gonna be better for everybody. Now, who it won't be better for are third-party studios and publishers. This is going to be a nightmare for them, to try to even get their games on Nintendo if their console is going to be powerful enough, to then have to make games for multiple SKUs as Xbox releases new hardware and PlayStation releases new hardware. Like, keep in mind, in the current landscape, by the end of this year, or say 6 months from now, there's going to be, say you're a third-party game dev, you're going to have to consider putting your games on PC, on all of the handhelds, like the Steam Deck and ROG Ally and all those, on the Xbox Series S and X, on the PlayStation 5 and PS5 Pro. And then here in a couple years, if Xbox is releasing new hardware in 2026, those dev kits will probably start going out in 2025, if not sooner, whenever they finalize the hardware. I think from a platform and from a gaming perspective, this prospect is really cool and likely. I think it sounds like a complete nightmare for the EAs of the world, for the Ubisofts of the world, for those studios and those publishers who aren't in already. I think it's gonna be kind of a nightmare. And I guess for Xbox as well, because they're going to put all their games everywhere else, right? I don't think this is a bad thing. This isn't me like calling out PlayStation or I'm trying not to simp too hard for Xbox, even though I think what they're doing in the long run is probably a good idea. I just think it's a really interesting time in gaming, and I think it's going to be a really interesting time to pay attention to everything that's happening and to see how things play out. I'm curious if PlayStation will move on from their kind of archaic way of focusing on certain things that they have for a really long time. I'm curious if the gambles that Xbox is making in various ways will pay off. And I'm curious if Nintendo will just keep on doing their own thing. It's going to be fun to pay attention to. Let me know what you think about all of that down in the comments. If you like this video, if you want more conversations about all of the platforms and gaming and all of that, consider subscribing to the channel. Like this video if you did. If you really liked it and you want to support all of the content I make, including these videos, a couple podcasts I have, sometimes streaming when I have time, please consider becoming a YouTube member. You get videos early. You get a cool little icon beside your name when you comment on the videos, and some member exclusive posts and things like that. If you want to see all of the ways you can support me and check out all of my other content, hit the link in the description of this video. That is all I have for this one. So until next time.